traitors.
Give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money.
Oh, you know what time it is. Shield time! If you look down in the description, you'll see a link to a Patreon, a Rumble, and a Discord server. If you want to see the uncut versions of these videos, go ahead and check out the Rumble. I cut these videos to fit YouTube's wonderful content policies, so if you'd like to see all the spicier jokes and things that YouTube would beat me with a spoon over, go ahead and check that out. If you want to come hang out or chat or tell me I'm a fucking retard, go ahead and give the Discord server a look. And finally, if you think the content is worth it, go ahead and give the Patreon a look. You know, patron subscriptions will encourage me to continue doing this. Maybe so I don't have to get a second job. Don't know. And, you know, it'll just help me improve the quality as well. Anything that goes into the Patreon will go back into the YouTube videos in some way, shape, or form. Also, once I finally get one patron subscriber, I will finally remove the annoying as shit Discord notifications. Marketing. So, yeah. Also, if you liked the video, go ahead, give it a like. If you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to annoy your friends with my amazing voice, or my squeaky chair, go ahead and share it. Alright, back to the video. I know it's July, but I still had this one last video to do on the Pride crap. So, one last day of Leviticus 20 verse 13 month. This is kind of the topic that... This is the rabbit hole that made me finally bite the bullet and say I needed to make more than one video. And this is an interesting topic, and it's a hard one to talk about. Not because of any specific content, but dare I say, because of the lack of information I can find on the topic. I can find information that acknowledges it is there, but when I try to do any deep diving, there is no sources that want to provide much information, but more propaganda. And people within this group are not exactly friendly towards conversation about this. I figured this out because I was like, oh, hey, well, I'll see if I can't find somebody who would be interested in answering some questions. And every Discord and every place I looked banned me, basically. And you might be wondering, well, what is this topic? And that topic is the connection between homosexuality, LGBTQ, all that good shit, and paganism. For all those of you who aren't into the religious crap, hate to break it to you, but there's a religious side to this, and I will be going into that as a Christian. So, like I said, I found a distinct lack of anything that wants to really provide anything outside of propaganda, which is really weird to me, because the pagans being gay isn't exactly news to anybody. Obviously you have the jokes about the Greeks. They are either the manliest of men or the twinkiest of twinks, but they were probably gay regardless. Things of that nature. Homosexuality was a common practice within pagan cultures, in part because their view of sexuality was completely different. Now, I will admit, this is an AI overview from Google, but this is unironically, like, the best information I can find, because everything else is... I know, I've already said this, but everything else is just right off the bat propaganda. But, paganism as a diverse collection of pre-Christian belief systems generally exhibits a more accepting view of homosexuality than modern organized religions, particularly those with Aramaic roots. This is particularly because the ancient pagan cultures often understood sexuality differently, focusing on practices and social status rather than fixed orientations. Many pagan traditions also incorporate deities and figures who exhibit gender fluidity or same-sex attraction, providing models for LGBTQ plus expression within their religious framework, yada yada blah blah blah. And like I said, this isn't news really to anybody. This is kind of already well understood. And even, this persists to this day. In the mid-'80s, some surveys were done, like some polling of the pagan community in the US at the time. And the numbers, like the percentages they came out with, is that a whopping 39% of pagans were some form of LGBTQ, alphabet person. They were some form of alphabet person, with I think 11% being straight up homosexual and the rest at the time being bisexual. Now, it's hard to really find any up-to-date models. The closest I could find was 2012, which showed a slight decrease. I would not be surprised if there was an increase since then, because it's been well over a decade and the culture war became much more prominent in its effects. I think another thing that probably plays into this, to go on a bit of a side tangent here, this video is going to be a little all over the place, because I'm trying to piece this together with what little information anything is actually willing to acknowledge. But from what I gathered, a part of this too is because because of the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s. For a bit of context behind that, and why I think this is even a thing, you had the Jesus movement in the 60s. And this does play into the pride thing, because the 60s and the 70s, that's when you had the civil rights movement and the flower power movement, which is literally just the 60s version of woke. Flower power is the hippies, for those of you who don't know. You had a parallel movement alongside that called the Jesus movement, where a non-denominational church called Calvary Chapel started reaching out, and they started a ministry towards these young hippies. And it was a very effective and very strong movement. It is the reason that a lot of boomers are Christians. It is the reason that a lot of boomers are Christians. If it wasn't for that, I think a lot more of them would have been, more comparable to the woke tards. At least in the US. This was definitely more of a US-based movement. The result of that is, by the time you get to the 80s, you have a bunch of these Christians, and over the course of the 80s and the 90s, they had adopted something called legalism. Legalism is a term for Christianity that essentially starts to focus on the do's and the don'ts, and like, oh, you must do this and you must not do that, and legalism. It becomes legalistic. I know, I'm using a word to define itself. Suck my nuts. Funny enough, legalism is actually considered a sin in the Bible. It kind of completely misses the point. But because of this, once you're getting into the 80s, that's kind of when the millennials are being, Gen X, millennials are kind of being born in that area. I know Gen X is more 70s, but definitely the millennials here. They basically grew up in the middle of the satanic panic, where because of the legalism, anything that looked weird was immediately considered satanic. D&D is satanic, Pokemon is satanic, Doom is all that stuff that Yeah, that's why, because of this stupid legalism. And so you had a generation of kids growing up in this essentially no fun allowed environment, which resulted in them hating Christianity and becoming rebellious. And this led a lot of people to go new atheist, but this also led a lot of people to go towards Satanism and paganism. And that is also this is the group that really brought around the modern woke movement, because the modern SJW and woke movement, I don't care what anybody tells you, is very much a millennial movement. It was started and heavily spearheaded by millennials. That's just a fact. And I think that in part plays into this. Now, before I did this research, I had kind of really assumed that this connection here, you know, the pagans supporting the gays and the other way around, was born more out of that rebellion, because the paganist group, you know, like the pagans of America, like the American pagans, the LGBTQ, all that stuff, have always been supported by communist groups and communist movements, because communist groups and communist movements in the U.S. heavily tried to undermine the structure and tradition of the U.S. And so obviously they're going to support anything that goes against the more Christian values that this nation was built upon. And so I had kind of just assumed, this is because they are both being supported by similar groups. They're both standing for similar things in that regard. Of course, they're to support each other. What I didn't expect was this to be a really more of a traditional thing. Obviously, like I stated, you know, homosexuality is a traditional practice for pagans in pretty much most, if not all, pagan religions, to my understanding. Again, I'm going off of limited information. Nothing really wants to give me anything outside of clear propaganda. But that is tradition for them, for one. It is something that some of their deities are depicted with as well. But it doesn't stop just there. Now, the one thing that I could actually find information on was the significance of the month of June in pagan tradition and the likes of that. Come to find out that June itself, in good old Pride Month, is a very it's a quite important month for a lot of different sects of paganism. Now, look, that might be an every month thing. I'm no expert on paganism, but I did find some very, very interesting themes. One specific website here actually goes ahead and just kind of goes through each day of June and lists something important. Alright, screen recorder on here. So, June 1st, Festival of the Oak Nymph. This pagan celebration honors all hamadryads, female nature spirits who are believed to inhabit oak trees. Decorate a pagan altar with acorns and wore some oak leaves in your hair. Okay, so this is like a celebration of that one dumb thing in Skyrim I keep beating the shit out of. June 2nd, Shephatu of Ishar, a pagan festival dedicated to the goddess Ishar is celebrated every year on this date. She is the ancient Assyrian and Babylonian deity who presides over love and fertility as well as war. The birth of the god Apollo is also celebrated on this day. The festival of Katasesmos is celebrated annually on this day on the Mediterranean islands of Cyprus. The seaside ritual consists of prayer to the souls of the departed, traditional water games, and sacred dance. In Japan, a Buddhist ritual for young girls is performed annually on this date and is dedicated to the goddesses Bafana, Bona Diu, Kuan Yin, Rumina, and Surabhi? I don't know. I don't know. I speak American. What the fuck is this word? This is a Catholic or a Christian thing. They call it Christian, but I believe it's probably going to be Catholic. But it's also was once, so it's Whit Sunday before the Christians thing was added. This is why I believe it's Catholic. Whit Sunday was at one time a pagan fertility festival. For context, that's an orgy. That's a fucking orgy. It was celebrated in Europe with a heathen feast that marked the death of the spirit of winter and the birth of the spirit of... Yeah, that's a fucking orgy. Fucking Atlantis. Okay, yeah, so apparently Atlantis sank in June. Good to know. On this day, approximately in June 6th, an annual festival of honor to honor ancestral spirits begins in Nigeria. The festival, which lasts for 1 week, consists of street dancing, offering of food and gift to do. So ancestor worship. The Vestalia, an annual festival in honor of the hearth goddess Vesta, began on this day in ancient Rome. During the 8-day-long festival, the shrine of Vesta was open to married women. After the festival was over, the shrine was once again forbidden to all except the goddess's attendants, Vestral virgins. Okay, that has some implications. In many Japanese villages on June 8th, an ancient rites festival is held annually on this day. Women wearing traditional kimonos recite prayers and light rice straw fires to honor the god of rice and to bless the crops. We pray to the rice. Oh, what the hell? We pray to the rice. My God, we pray to the holy rice cooker. What the hell? It's 1890s, 1692. That's gonna be Catholics and shit. I don't care about that. June 12th, light gold-colored candles on your altar and wear oak leaves in your hair to honor the Greek gods. Hey, Nellup, I got one for you. Nellup. In ancient Rome, the goddess Minerva, patroness of wisdom and the arts and a deity of battle, was honored annually on this date as her sacred festival, the Lesser Quintamaris of Navarna. In India, this day was sacred to Jagannath, a benevolent incarnation of the god Vishnu, an annual festival in honor of his celebration. I don't know. Silver Chalice Day. Every year on this day, Wiccan friends and coven members gather together in a circle to rejoice and share a traditional silver chalice of wine or fruit juice, concentrated in the name of the goddess and her consort, the horned god. Many pagan hand fastings and wickenings are performed by coven priestesses around this time of the month. This is horned god. This is some fucking Age of Sigmar sounding bullshit. On this date in the year 1881, famous voodoo queen Mary LaVue died in her home in New Orleans, Louisiana. Okay, it's not exactly what I'm looking for, but good to know. An annual purification ritual, this is June 17th, to drive away evil spirits of the rainy season take place on this date in Nara, Japan. Okay. Also on this date, Eurydice, a tree nymph who was transformed into an underworld goddess after dying from a serpent bite, was honored annually in ancient Greece. I think that should be more than enough. I'm not going to go through this whole list. I think I've gone through more than enough here, but I find it interesting. There seems to be a very reoccurring theme here. A very common theme indeed. I'm noticing a lot of stuff related to different pagan goddesses, and a lot of them are in some way connected to fertility or things of that nature. Not to mention that the entire month of June was also something known as Litha to the Celts, which was basically a pagan celebration of the beginning of summer. Let's see here. I don't know much about this. Let me pull up a page on this. Okay, yeah, so Litha is also something known as Midsummer. It's basically celebrated on the longest day of the year, and it has some relevance to some pagan traditions. Apparently it seems to be a multiple thing, but even then you've got a multitude of just different pagan traditions and things of that nature that are celebrated within this month. So obviously you have the Midsummer here. As I mentioned in that list, there was Vesta worshipped during June. Vesta is the goddess of hearth, home, family, and Roman religion. Apparently, she is also a goddess of virgins. So, I guess if you haven't been laid, you're supposed to worship this one. Minerva was worshipped in this month, the Roman goddess of wisdom, justice, law, victory, and the sponsor of arts, trade, and strategy. She's also the goddess of warfare, though with a focus on strategic warfare. Okay, so the RTS goddess, I guess. Apparently there's a goddess called Shirabhi that's worshipped or celebrated, I guess, in this month. Goddess Surabhi, as described in the Purana, is a significant deity symbolizing prosperity and auspiciousness, particularly marked by her appearance in the sky. She's regarded as the mother of cattle and other domestic animals, highlighting her nurturing role in agriculture and livestock. Additionally, Surabhi is recognized in divine lineage for having 2 daughters. Okay, so this is like one of the things that I saw looking this one up. It's not on this page that I just read, but apparently she's kind of a maternal goddess. Rumina was a goddess is a goddess who protected feeding mothers and possibly nursing infants. Okay, that's a thing. There was Kuan Yin was one of the goddesses celebrated in this month, which is a Eastern goddess. I'm reading this here. Kuan Yin, also known as Guanyin or Kuan Yin, is a revered figure in East Asian Buddhism, particularly in China, and is widely known as the Bodhisattva of compassion. She's the female aspect of the male Bodhisattva, and my mother bitched about bionicle names when I was a kid. A deity associated with compassion and mercy in both Mahana and Vajrayana Buddhism. There is Bona Dia, which is a Roman goddess who is related with chastity and fertility amongst married Roman women, healing and the protection of the state and the people of Rome. Going up to the Irish, there's Luch or Lug, a member of the Tuatha de Danann, banana, a group of supernatural beings. Lug is portrayed as a warrior, a king, master craftsman. He's allocated with skill and master. Okay, that's apparently some super soldier bullshit. Some pagan super soldier bullshit. And yeah, Obviously there's exceptions here, but the month of June has a strong connection with pagan goddesses that celebrate different portions of femininity and fertility and straight up lust. Like I said, the fucking orgy. The fucking orgy. So yeah, the June for pagans, there's a large connection between that and, you know, feminine, maternal, and lust. In some cases, lustful bullshit. At risk of sounding like a conspiracy theorist, doesn't that line up quite well with the alphabet movement? Think about it for a minute. Now, transgenderism, despite the fact that I believe that the majority, I think through some statistics, the majority of trans people is actually female to male, statistically, but I think most of that's transgenders. But look at what's mostly pushed with that, male to female. With the homosexuality, what was pushed mostly with that? Gay men. Now you might things like that. Now you might be thinking, well, isn't that what's your connection here? This is focusing on dudes. It's focusing on dudes taking on feminine traits. The LGBTQ movement is very feminine in nature. The ideologies it has are very feminine in nature. And do I really need to draw a line between LGBTQ and lust? The whole thing is about sexual identity. That's lust. That is just no way around it. That is a direct connection to lust. It is a celebration of the different lusts of these people. It is a feminine coded lust celebration that has decided to celebrate its pride throughout the month of June. A pride for their lusts and their deviancy throughout June that has a large pagan portion of it, almost half. 39% of the pagans in the U.S. at the time of that study were LGBTQ of some kind, or mostly gay or bi. That is 11 points short of half. That is no small number. So there's a large overlap between these two groups, and they share a lot of ideology, historically and traditionally. Now, I get it, this video has been kind of an all-over-the-place video, so I'm going to try and kind of bring this all together here. And this is the religious part of it, so the time to piss off the atheists. I believe it is no coincidence that a month that is traditionally connected to feminine and lustful pagan ideology is the month that has been adopted to support LGBTQ. I don't think that's a coincidence. There's nothing new under the sun. There is something spiritual about this. As a Christian, that is something that sounds like supernatural warfare to me when I hear it. It is no coincidence that the same ideologies, or ideologies pushing the same things, adopt the same month and overlap. There is, once is a coincidence, twice is lucky, three times you're starting to look at a pattern. And we're getting to pattern territory here. I'm just gonna say it. The LGBTQ movement is a pseudo-pagan movement. It is a pagan movement that has accepted atheism. And honestly, atheism, in many ways, just due to what it is, ends up sharing ideologies with paganism. Not obviously not in the form of mythologies and whatnot, but a lot of similar views can be shared, because this is spiritual warfare. This is a lack of God problem. When you look at the Bible, it talks about how if you are not with God, you are with the world. And it talks about things like worshiping creation and whatnot. It basically, long story short, through a series and collection of verses in the Bible, it paints the idea that if you are not following God, you are following the world, and the same ideologies will slip in through that. And I get it. Not everybody watching this is a Christian, but I am, so screw you. I'm going to go down this rabbit hole. This all just kind of ties together in this is a worldly movement that is pushing worldly things. There is a spiritual warfare or not. If you're not following God, you're going to end up down this route. There is no coincidence that Pride Month is... There's no coincidence that the alphabet community has adopted June to be their Pride Month and share a lot in common with the pagans. There is no coincidence that June also just so happens to be a worship of a lot of the things that the alphabet movement props up in parades. You know, feminism is also heavily connected to that movement. You know, feminist ideology. It's a celebration of those sorts of things. Again, a lot of the stuff connected to June with paganism is a celebration of feminism, or not the ideology, but, you know, like actual, like, you know, feminine aspects. There's a heavy connection with lust with both of them. Feminism was connected to the sexual revolution, which also happened around the same time in the civil rights movement. It is all degeneracy. It all leads down the same route. This, again, nothing new under the sun. And kind of going back on some of the other things I touched on with my other videos, just kind of to wrap this whole Leviticus 20 verse 13 month up with a nice bow. This is a pseudo-religious movement. I heavily pointed this out, or I just did point this out with the trans video, but it's more than just the trans part of this. This whole thing is essentially a pseudo-religious movement. Think about it for a minute. People who are involved in this movement make their sexuality their personality. They follow their sexuality like a creed. They support it like a creed. They want to indoctrinate. They have their own form of street witnessing. Their pride parades. The reason they want to put it in schools so much. This all heavily aligns with the continued, the witnessing of a religion. Indoctrination expands teaching it to the young. This matches up with a religion. The almost dehumanizing of people who do not agree with the group, the viewing them as a problem that need to be removed. This matches up with a lot of religions. Old Christianity, Islam, some pagan religions, not all of them. But this lines up with that as well. This idea that, you aren't... Anybody who criticizes the religion, anybody who is against the religion is a sinner, they're a heretic, they're a problem. And they need to be punished. And just on and on. There is a lot of parallels between the alphabet movement and religion. I find no surprise in that. I find no surprise that there is a connection with paganism. Because the alphabet movement, the Pride movement, is, in its own right, a modern pagan religion. It is just a modern pagan. That's what it is. It is a pseudo-religious movement that does share a lot with pagan religions. Because there's nothing new under the sun. Humans don't change much. We all make the same stupid mistakes. Now, like I said, this video was a hard one to put together because finding information was a pain in the ass. Most stuff on the topic was some form of propaganda, or I guess we're calling this religion, religious texts. I couldn't find anything just purely historic outside of Wikipedia. So I do apologize for this video, kind of just an everywhere ramble. But with this best I can do attempt to bring everything together, I guess I should provide a solution. Well, it's a very complicated problem, but I can think of one really good solution.
Bam bam Iran, bam 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 Iran, bam 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 Iran, bam 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 Iran. What country's got a feeling really hit the ceiling? Bam Iran, bam 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 Iran. Went to a mosque, gonna throw some rocks. Tell the Ayatollah gonna put you in a box. Bam Iran, bam 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 bam. Sam's getting pretty hot. Time to turn Iran into a parking lot. Bomb Iran, bomb, 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 bomb Iran, bomb, bomb Iran. The country's got a feeling really hit the ceiling. Bomb Iran, bomb, 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 bomb Iran.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, and please consider subscribing to the channel for more of this stupid nonsense. Also, if you'd like to hang out or just call me a stupid idiot dummy face, go ahead and check out the Discord. And if you'd like to support more content like this, go ahead and give out the Patreon a check. I hope y'all have yourselves a good day.